Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
It's a whole lot of fun with jokes and recaps once the match is done. From the field to the office, we're ready to go on the One Star Postgame Show.
All right, it's the One Star Cowboys podcast. I'm Kevin Turner. We have Saad Youssef and Kent Garrison. We will hear from Jon Machota momentarily on this Tuesday morning. Hope everyone is doing well. Cowboys get the win over the Raiders. Todd, I knew the Raiders were bad. I don't know if I knew they were that bad.
Yeah, it's a disaster all around, and it's kind of sad because they have two generational talents on each side of the ball, and Brock Bowers on offense and then Max Crosby on defense. But it's just there's just nothing around those two players, and you wonder what Brock Bowers would look like if he had a quarterback and just offensive and that quarterback and offensive line and threat. Like you could be talking about, the production of a prime, top tight end we've seen with like Gronkowski and Kelsey and those type of guys. And then Max Crosby, I mean, hell, like him, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt and Micah, that's the class right there. I mean, of the NFL. So you're right though. It's bad, man. Like, Ashton Genty, they showed that stat where he has like 1.4 yards before contact, which is like the worst in the NFL. There's no offensive line. And when there's no offensive line and then you traded away your top receiver, Brock Bowers was hurt for a chunk of the season. I don't really know what to make of Geno either because he was fine in Seattle, but it hasn't worked out. And then the defense on the back end, everything, it just seems like it's a bunch of has-beens playing defense. You're right though. It's bad all the way around. I didn't really understand how bad it was until actually watching a full game like that.
So Cowboys first drive, 3 and out, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens on the bench for that first series. Defense gets a stop there for the Raiders. And then the Cowboys though, they also get a stop on the first drive of the game. The defense gets a stop. How about that? Cowboys get it back. Dak fumbles, got hit by Max Crosby. And then the Raiders have to settle for 3. So red zone defense is Logan Wilson. It kind of gets in the way of Trey Tucker and Geno Smith. So the Raiders up 3-0. And then the Cowboys respond with a pretty big drive. 4th and 3. And Dallas ties the game 3-3. I thought it was interesting hearing Troy talk about how Brian Schottenheimer was asked about analytics and stuff and was saying that he kind of considers himself, one of the more like conservative coaches in the league. I don't know that I've ever really thought about Brian in that way yet, but I guess we're still operating on a small sample size with him. Would you say that about him?
Yeah, so a little bit.
Yeah,
not necessarily because of the eye test, but I've seen numbers and stats and charts about how the Cowboys have been more conservative. I'm with you. I don't think that I kind of viewed it just by watching the games and watching him call the game. I kind of view him down the middle, like not Dan Campbell, but not like Jason Garrett, But I think the thing that kind of makes him appear more conservative is that the whole league has gone more risky and go for it on 4th downs and all that kind of stuff. So I think Schottenheimer, compared to what, he would have been, a few years ago, he would have been kind of more on the risky end, but I think now he's a little bit more on the standard conservative side. So, yeah.
I've definitely, and granted, this team's been in a lot of weird positions in some of these games where, some of these games have gotten ugly and some of these games have been like, kind of, even tonight is a blowout, just you're on the opposite side of it. But I definitely haven't questioned much of what he's done. And I know he's had a few positions in the last couple weeks where the offense is struggling a little bit, but there have been some times where you go, oh, why didn't you take the points there? But I definitely haven't questioned much of his game management or analytical, philosophy so far, his play calling philosophy, which is like one of the big questions going into the year. And maybe it's easy to say when the offense is cooking pretty good like they did tonight after the last two games the offense didn't get a lot going. It's easy to go, oh, well, I haven't questioned much about that, but I really haven't for a first-time head coach. That's always a good sign.
Yeah, I thought the play calling has been, pretty solid throughout. I think the game management, the only thing we've questioned in the last couple of weeks in particular with the Denver game and in the Arizona game, it was only stuff where we're talking about how bad the defense is, that you have to go out of conventional wisdom and do really ridiculous things that you wouldn't think about doing if your defense wasn't so bad. So I think it's kind of been exceptional situations. Remember back in the Denver game, we're talking about you got to go for it on like 4th down from your own 29-yard line and that kind of stuff. It's not because, it's something so obvious that Brian Schottenheimer's doing wrong or conservative. It's just been, hey, your defense is so bad that you have to kind of get ahead of it and do some weird, crazy things. I don't think Brian Schottenheimer is ever going to be the guy that, and nor does he need to be like Dan Campbell, who just went over 5 on 4th downs against Philadelphia. Like, he's not going to be that kind of guy, but this offense does afford you a little bit more leeway. And I think he did that. I think that 4th down touchdown to Jake Ferguson, great decision to go for it on 4th down. I don't care if they didn't make it on that 4th down. That was a great decision to go for it. Late in the game, CeeDee Lamb as wide open as you can see. Good decision to go on 4th down. They were up 17. Kicking a field goal doesn't really do anything for you at that point. You're up 3 possessions. You stay up 3 possessions. Whether then you can score a touchdown and potentially go up even more. So I think those things I look at it. I think he's doing good situationally. But again, to your point, KT, how we started, and Troy was talking about this on the broadcast last night as well. It's hard to gauge exactly where this puts the Cowboys because the Raiders are so bad. But I thought for you can only play what's on your schedule, and the Raiders were on the schedule and the Cowboys did a good job. And I guess we can't really take that for granted after, they just got their ass kicked by the Cardinals 2 weeks ago.
No, for sure. I mean, this team is in an interesting place. I mean, wiping out the Raiders is not like some big thing to write home about, right? But it is another win. Your 4th of the year. You're 4-5-1. I could have a little fun and say, hey, they are half a game behind the Chiefs in overall league standings there. That Panthers loss might look a little bit better when you say the Panthers have won 5 games or however many games the Panthers have won so far. Like, you can find a way, the Bears are first place in the NFC North. Like, you always find a way to make these things look a little bit better. The Bears have yet to beat a team that's over 500. The Cowboys, honestly, maybe their best results in a game might be like tying Green Bay, although Green Bay is not as good as maybe you thought they were in week 4. So there's a lot to go. You're about to hit it. It's gauntlet time now. Eagles, Chiefs, Lions. You'll find out, but man, the defensive reinforcements are there, and to have 5 guys playing tonight, maybe even 6 actually, 6 guys playing tonight who just haven't been a part of it in the last couple of weeks, and a couple more fresh ones is at least for me. It's it's a little bit more of a way for me to go, you know what? The first 9-10 games of Matt Eberflus, let's start clean now, and maybe that's a little too far, but it really felt like a fresh defense tonight, and playing the Raiders will do that, I guess. But Revel's going to be there. Quentin Williams is going to be here moving forward. I don't know about Hooker and Donovan Wilson. I don't know how much they're a part of this thing for the future. They're going to be Logan Wilson. I don't know, but some of those guys are, and I think that's something we should consider when we're thinking about the DC as well.
Yeah, no, and the other thing is, and they went over this on the broadcast. I even mentioned it before the game as well. You do, I think, have to view this defense as this is game 1, not because of any because it's one big trade of Quentin Williams or something, but you kind of overhauled the defense overnight in some respect. I mean, you talk about numbers, right? Like Logan Wilson is playing, Quinnen Williams, Savon Ravel, Malik Hooker just came back for the first time since week 4. DeMarvion Overshown made his debut, and he's back in the fold now. I mean, that's half the defense that's different. So I think it's fair to view the defense up to Arizona one way, and then going on from tonight in another way. Obviously, dealing with the tragic loss of Marshawn Nealon on the field, that was also a big factor. He was a factor, in terms of the rotation and stuff. So it's a very different look defensively now moving forward. So I'm willing to kind of start from scratch. But again, if this game happened in week 1 of the NFL season, I wouldn't be saying the Cowboys defense is spectacular. I would be encouraged by it. I would feel good about it, but I would still say what I'm saying right now, which is I need to see against better competition. And lucky for you, you got a lot of really good competition coming up. The gauntlet starts now. So here we go.
I'm more concerned about the secondaries aspect. I think that's what I'm more difficult on. And I think look, there's a lot that's happened. Trayvon Diggs, which by the way, we still don't know what happened to him. That and then get Deron Bland back after he got hurt. Obviously we've been waiting in Revel to get here. Carson now here, and Carson looked pretty good last night. You kind of throw that all together, and I'm looking at that. The defensive tackles have not been awful. Now, there's been games where they have definitely struggled against the run, and you can't always just put that on the defensive tackles. I think it's the first thing people think of when you think about not stopping the run. I think linebackers have been kind of bad in that regard and things like that. I found some stat if you want to get totally analytical for a minute. Yeah. Cowboys top 5 in quick pressure rate, 2.5 seconds, top 5, the number 5 team in quick pressure rate and under 2.5 seconds from defensive tackles generating quick pressure. I mean, the Cowboys are up there. I think that's been good. And you add Quinnen Williams to that. Defensive tackle was probably not as big of a black hole as we thought because you didn't have all this help. But if you can somehow meld all of it together, and they're going to have to get better linebacker play. Overshown was out there a little bit. Didn't make a ton of plays tonight, but they also weren't overusing him clearly. You saw a pretty big rotation at linebacker. I just think it's something like the secondary I am concerned with moving forward, but I'm really not as concerned about everywhere else on the field.
Yeah. If we are talking about the secondary, though, I do want to point out a great bounce back game for Deron Bland. I mean, yes. he got torched on a national stage, on this same national stage of a Monday night game. Obviously that clip in the end zone against Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of took off, and he just had a bad day overall against the Cardinals. I thought he had a really good game. I thought, the pass breakups were there. I thought his one-on-one coverage with Brock Bowers, whether it was breaking up a pass or even holding on for dear life for a tackle to get it short of a first down, he was making plays throughout, and that's encouraging. And to be honest, it's the least surprising thing. If you ask me between those two corners, I mean, Deron Bland is someone I'm talking about Bland and Diggs. Diggs is somebody who, if something goes south or something, there's multiple elements that I'm watching for in terms of what's his attitude going to be like and how is he going to respond on the field. Deron Bland's attitude was always going to be fine. That's not something you ever worry about, but it was encouraging to see that, yeah, not a great offense by any stretch, but like I said, Bowers is a dude, and Deron Bland was matched up against him a few times, and I thought he held his own. But beyond that, no, I do agree with you. When we talk about how different the defense looks from last year to this year, probably one of the main differences, aside from Micah, is the loss of Jordan Lewis. And so I think that's something that, the Cowboys do feel a bit. And I think they are kind of, in that territory that they can get, excuse me, they can get exposed by good quarterbacks and playmakers on offense. And, the Raiders don't have that.
When you get the win 33-16, it's easy to forget that going into the second quarter, Las Vegas led 6-3, and the Cowboys responded with a big, long drive, and Dak was eating through the air. They were running it a little bit. They were setting up play action. Everything was looking good with the offense. Dak hit CeeDee for a touchdown, so it's 10-6. Then we had a big Quinnen Williams drive where he got a sack on second down. He had a big pressure on third down. Cowboys get it back. And then we had a 4th and 1 because it was 3rd and 10, and Dak checked down to Hunter Lipke, and he gets 9 yards. So it's 4th and 1 at the 6-yard line, middle of the second quarter, scores 10-6, and Shoddy says we're going for it, and they ended up taking a timeout. And then they hit Ferguson for the touchdown right over the middle, wide open, and then it's 17-6. And from then on, it never really felt like the game was close again.
Yeah, no, and that's how we want kind of Brian Schottenheimer to coach, but not just against the bad teams. You got to be willing to do it against the good teams too. And I thought that decision was great. I thought Dak, he just continues to be that guy. Aside from a very strong Denver defense and then a very uncharacteristic game, specifically uncharacteristic first half against the Arizona Cardinals, I thought Dak has just been at MVP level. He's not going to get the love. He's not going to be in the race with Drake May and Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen. Like, he's not going to be in that category, of course, because the team is so bad. But he's been playing at an electric level, and it wasn't just 4 touchdowns. It was 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers today. And there's something to be said about spreading the wealth that way and kind of, making it work. So, yeah, and Javonte Williams, new season high in rushing attempts. I thought he handled the rock really well too.
Yeah.
It was just a very complete performance by the Cowboys, which is not something we can often say, in terms of the offense and the defense. We've had games before where we can say the offense was very involved. But KT, something you mentioned earlier, including this game against the Raiders that the Cowboys just had last night. If you were ranking the Cowboys games by feel, what's crazy, I think I still put the tie against the Packers and the loss against the Eagles as 1 and 2 in some order. I don't know how good I feel about the Raiders, Commanders, Jets,
Giants.
Giant. Like, I don't know how great I feel about those wins. I think by feel, I still kind of look at the loss against the Eagles and the tie against the Packers is probably my 1 and 2.
Yeah. Because that last night felt good, but it was like, I don't know. It's hard. It's been hard to take the Raiders seriously for a while now.
Yeah.
And just seeing how things had been going with Geno and Pete Carroll and that whole deal.
Now, if you do want to tie in the emotional factor coming off of what they're coming off of and stuff, sure. In totality, I can understand putting this Raiders game up high. They were going through obviously a lot as a team. It was a very complete performance on the field. I'm just saying, if you're just looking at on the field, man on man type thing, it's, they just don't have that impressive win, but they're going to have opportunities to get it.
For me, I guess I would say this sounds crazy. It's the loss to the Eagles.
Yeah.
Because you could have won that game. And I think the Green Bay game was more, this still was ugly. So, I don't know. You felt good about the offense. That's what we're like. Tonight, I think the story of this game, there's a lot of stories on this game, I guess, but George Pickens. And incredible, and with CeeDee in the lineup, it's going to open up so much for him and open up so much for anyone. That's why Ryan Flanoy and Jake Ferguson can go get touchdowns like that. 4th and 1, no one's paying attention to Jake Ferguson with both those guys in the field. The Ryan Flanoy touchdown, no one's thinking about him ever. So those are some things, like the George Pickens things, and clearly, look, they're going to try to sign him, and we'll see. Des Bryant's putting out crazy tweets into the world, telling him not to take the bus. Okay, get ready for the discourse, because that's definitely going to be a big part of Cowboys football over the next 5 months, is discourse about George Pickens' contract, or if the Cowboys are going to franchise him. He's spectacular. It's not quite on the level of Myles Garrett and Max Crosby having their careers wasted by terrible teams. But, man, those goobers at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers really did waste so much of what he was doing or could have been doing the first couple years of his career.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. Thankfully he only wasted a couple years. You're talking about Crosby and Garrett, who have wasted their entire primes. But George Pickens is just entering his prime, or not entering. That's not true. He is in his prime right now.
Yeah.
And that's the decision that they have with that quarterback. They were talking about this on the broadcast as well. In terms of tying up however many million that is into your passing game between Dak, CeeDee, George Pickens. They just gave Jake Ferguson, a contract as well. I thought the Ferguson thing was interesting in terms of giving him a contract, mostly because, I don't think we got into a deep discussion about this, but if you're the front office and if you're looking ahead, and remember, they gave Ferguson the contract before a single snap was played in the regular season. So they didn't really know how electric and what kind of a fit George Pickens would exactly be. The signs were all there from what kind of talent he's been. But if you've invested a second round pick in a tight end, if you've signed a priority undrafted free agent and Brevin Spanford as a tight end, and your previous tight end strategy was, okay, Dalton Schultz, good career, but we're just going to plug in this next guy and he's going to be you. And when you talk about, because the Cowboys talk so much about allocating the pie, and that's what we hear about why Micah, their reasoning for why Micah is not here either, is because of how much more you can do with his money. I just, Jake Ferguson's having a great season. He had a great game, everything, but it kind of makes you wonder, what if Ferguson's contract is something they kind of look at as part of the reason why, if they choose not to move, if things fall apart with Pickens. I don't think they will. I think Pickens is going to be playing here in 2026 almost for sure. I feel that way. I don't know if it's going to be on a long-term extension, though. It might be on a franchise tag, and it might cause some chaos throughout the offseason, but I just can't see Jerry watching all this, all these fireworks fly and, not be enticed to just do it.
No, 100%. And there are like things that they can do to the cap to make room. I think the danger is just like any of the bad George Pickens things that we really haven't seen much of, but some of those things from the past came back. Like that's where the risk is. The risk is not at all anything on the field, and honestly, not at all. I mean, I know Troy and Joe on the broadcast last night were mentioning the Bengals. I mean, that's an easy thing to say. Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. I get it, but there's still ways to make it work and move money around and do a lot of different things. And they're not as like cap strapped as they would have been if they got Micah, and we know all that. But like, there's things you can do easily. Like, dude, if you wanted to cut Kevontae Turpin, you could save $8 million over the next 2 years for, like little things like that. Like, yeah, Trayvon Diggs. Yeah.
A defensive tackle, probably Kenny Clark. So yeah, you're right. They definitely have, I think the big thing also is, Donovan Ezraku has come along really well. And if you're looking at, just in general, guys that you need to be playing well on rookie deals, that's going to be a really big thing. And they have multiple first round picks, and it's not out of the realm. Look, you have a quarterback, you have a top receiver and top second number 2 receiver, and you have defensive tackles. I would say in some order, those position groups are the hardest ones to draft and make an instant impact as a rookie. Defensive tackle, quarterback, and maybe not quarterback, because sometimes rookie quarterbacks do flourish, but wide receiver in terms of a top tier wide receiver. You already have all that. So these these draft picks that you have next year, that's not a lot, but you have some premium ones in the first round. You can use those to fill out a lot of your roster, whether it's safeties, corners, whatever it is, and really make an impact. So yeah, I think you're right. They have plenty of flexibility on this roster and with the salary cap to make things happen.
And by the way, the money doesn't make sense for Kenny Clark to come back right now, but that's something, if he likes it here, we could talk about finding a way to do something, and he's, at his age might be like, I kind of like it here and I don't want to go be a free agent or test the market, because it does make sense to not pay him $20 million next year. So like the Cowboys have got to get away from that. But if there's some meat in the middle type ground, I would be more than open to that, because having him, Quentin Williams, and Osa all fresh and kind of rotating them, like using them all in certain scenarios, it's something you got to really like and consider and get your bones of your defense kind of set up. So those are big long-term, things that we can handle. Let's be quick on this. I know we're going to turn it over to John, and he'll have his thoughts. And we'll catch up later in the week with a more in-depth podcast. But that first series, I know a lot of people were wondering about this, as the game went on, kind of caught everyone off guard when CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens aren't starting. But as Brian Schottenheimer said in the post-game press conference, that they made a coach's decision. There were some things that were missed, and he, went on to praise them for not hanging their heads. Then they, the media obviously followed up: practice, meetings, curfew, and he said just a couple things missed. I will point out, we haven't seen this behavior from CeeDee Lamb, at least that I can remember. George Pickens was known in Pittsburgh for being late and for missing things from time to time. Fined multiple times. So just something when you sit there and you're talking about $35 million or whatever it's going to be. I ain't worried about it. In fact, I think I tweeted out, this is the same team that had the White House back in the day. I don't think we need to be, this isn't college. I don't think we need to be, having guys sit out the first series of the game, especially for a team that needs to take the lead. I also am not some stickler for discipline, because I definitely got that in my mentions a lot, where no, you got to show them who's the boss, and you got to discipline everybody, I guess. I don't know.
No, I mean, we all know the story about Jimmy Johnson, who, cut a fringe player and was like, yeah, I mean, he's a fringe player, so he's the guy that you're going to make the example out of and things like that. My I guess most, my biggest, I guess, intriguing thought with that whole situation is just the what if game. What if this was the Kansas City Chiefs again, as opposed to the Las Vegas Raiders? Do they still sit out the first series when you know how precious every possession is going to be? The other thing I guess I would say is, what if this game, even against the Raiders, ended up being a very close one down the stretch? How much would we be spending a whole podcast about how they threw away a drive to show a point or whatever? At the end of the day, there's a lot of revisionist history when it comes to all that, right? So I think there's that aspect of it, but I think it worked out fine for them because the Raiders are just a bad team. But yeah, it is really interesting to imagine what it would be if it was the Chiefs on the other side, if it was a close game, all of those things. Now, credit to both Schottenheimer and the players. We saw plenty of images and clips of them celebrating together. Schottenheimer went at one point and celebrated with both of them, all that kind of stuff. So the vibes seemed fine. But I also had this thought during the game where it just felt like Dak made it a point to play good cop to the situation. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading way too much into it and I'm giving Dak credit where there's not really credit to be earned, I guess. But I just found it really fascinating that, that happens. And then Dak, who I really do believe is one of the best leaders in all of sports, goes out and gives George Pickens 11 targets on the day, CeeDee 7 targets, and George Pickens has 9 catches, 144 yards and a touchdown, CeeDee 5 for 66 and a touchdown. And like I said, CeeDee probably has another touchdown there at the end, which was just a clean drop for him. So it almost felt like Dak played it cool with the coaches, in terms of, hey, you got to do your thing. But then he almost went to his boys after that and was like, hey, don't worry about it. Brush it off. I got you. And then kind of got them involved. It's like I said, I don't know if all that is there, but Dak is one of the better leaders in the game. Wouldn't surprise me if that was in his mind.
Yeah, no. And let me throw one thing in here just for context, for fun. Last Christmas, Steelers, Chiefs. George Pickens showed up late to the Steelers Christmas game. He did not arrive at the stadium until the Steelers had submitted their inactive list. Tomlin told every player to be there at least 2 hours before kickoff. Pickens arrived an hour and 25 minutes before kickoffs. Now, these are things that were missed. Who knows? There's a lot of meetings, too. These guys have so many meetings.
Yeah.
Maybe your planner, maybe you just was at the wrong. You ever do that?
Yeah.
You got an appointment? Oh, God, that's this week? I wrote it down wrong. It's something, not that big of a deal, especially when you get a huge win. I'll tell you what, Saad, we've done enough damage. You and I and John and Kent will be back a little later in the week as well, because just like that, snaps into focus. 4-5-1, sitting there with currently a 6% chance to make the playoffs, 7% chance to make the playoffs. And you go beat the Eagles, and that can double. It could be 14%. And I got that from the athletic playoff machine that you and John built with your bare hands, the NFL playoff simulator. Let's hear from Father John, and we'll catch up later in the week and break things down, do everything that we need to do, and we'll get you ready for Cowboys and Eagles. Ladies and gentlemen, go follow Saad. Go follow him. This works at The Athletic. Catch him on social media. If you have any questions for us that you ever want us to hit on the podcast, make sure that you you can tweet at us or follow on Instagram at One Star Cowboys Pod. That'd be cool. And we'll catch you. We'll catch you a little bit later in the week. All right, John, what do you got, man? Hit us with it.
I get it. It's the Raiders. They're not very good at football. So I don't want to take this too far, but I was very impressed with Quinnen Williams tonight. I know this is a game where you could say that about Dak Prescott. You could say that about George Pickens. CeeDee Lamb had his moments, but we've seen the offense play really well. We haven't seen the defense play like this. And again, I know it's the Raiders, so you can say, does it really matter? But I do think the addition of Quinnen Williams showed up in this game, and it showed some signs of what this defense can do going forward. Be one of the best defenses in the league? Not this year. No, I'm not an idiot. Okay. But there are glimpses of what it could potentially be beyond this season with Quinnen Williams in the middle of that defense. And certainly having a guy like DeMarvion Overshown back, maybe the bar is just being set too low for me, but just how bad the defense has been this year, I just saw some signs tonight that make me think that it's not as far away now that you add a guy in the middle like Quinnen Williams. And it's not just the sacks, what they did against the run, shutting down Ashton Genty, holding the Raiders as a team to, I think it was 27 yards, I believe, on 12 carries. That was impressive. Again, I know it's a bad team. We've seen them beat bad teams. We're going to find out a lot more in the next few games, obviously, with Kansas City and Philadelphia and Detroit. But I thought that some of those things that were done on defense, I thought that was the first time that I've really felt like this season where you could kind of see where there's some positives in the future there. And so that was my biggest takeaway from the game. Obviously, if you guys have listened to previous podcasts, I don't think this is a playoff team. I don't think that they're about to run off this long winning streak and or even winning like 4 of their next 5. I don't see that happening. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't think it's very likely. So for me personally, when I watch this team, I think about what it could be beyond this season. And so that's where the Quinnen Williams thing really jumped out to me. Big storyline as the game started is you are watching the Cowboys offense on the field and you're kind of wondering where's CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and they're on the sideline, and clearly there's something going on there. And then we find out that they missed a quote couple things. That's what Brian Schottenheimer said after the game, and so it sounds like this is something that happened when the team got here to Las Vegas. Now the team, they did not stay. The hotel they stayed at was not in, like I know a lot of people probably think, oh well, they were staying in on the Strip or something like that. No, they did for the preseason game last year here, but this year they didn't. They stayed about 25 minutes away from the stadium. And so I don't know if CeeDee and George were out late. I don't know if they missed curfew. I don't know. there's tons of speculation just because they didn't need, none of the parties involved gave anything definitive on what the situation was. Obviously, both of them played well in the game. Dak Prescott threw 4 touchdown passes, and one was the CeeDee, one was the Pickens. Pickens had over 140 yards receiving. And so they did their part on the field, but it was kind of strange to not only have one star receiver not out there, but 2 star receivers not out there. So that was obviously a big story early. But yeah, the way that they played, I thought that was pretty impressive, especially when you factor in how they've played the last couple of weeks, including against the Arizona Cardinals, the way we've seen this team play against the Carolina Panthers. It just wasn't a gimme as I was walking into the stadium thinking, oh, well, obviously the Cowboys will win this game. I did think having the emotions of Marshawn Nealon's passing and the team certainly rallying around that. You saw his jersey was hung in the locker before the game, during the game, and then you saw his jersey was also behind the bench on the defensive part of the bench during the game as well. And obviously it was an emotional game for the players, but you just really don't know how a team's going to respond to that type of, that type of loss. There's no real blueprint on how you handle it. There's no guarantee that you know how the team is going to play when you're coming off of something like that. And so this was one of the more impressive games that they've played this season. Still a long way to go. But I thought there were definitely some positives here that they can build on, not only for the rest of the season, but then into next season as well. And it starts with Quentin Williams.
I don't have time to have a bad time. It ain't on my schedule.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.